Veuillez, monsieur. Bonjour, bonjour. Comment vous allez? Yi kalafi. Zakramba. Tum kiware. Yam yi kalafi.
No machines, no payroll, just the thunder of 20,000 determined footsteps as women across Burkina Faso rose at dawn and reshaped the future with their bare hands.
The story does not begin with a government announcement, an international headline, or a ceremonial ribbon cutting. It begins with dust rising across the sun-baked roads of Burkina Faso, drifting above the savannas like a signal flare. But this dust is not from trucks. It is not from bulldozers. It is from thousands of footsteps, thousands of hands, thousands of women moving with purpose. Across towns, villages, and remote hamlets, a wave of determination surged through the country. 20,000 women, farmers, traders, teachers, mothers, grandmothers, students, rose together with one vision: to help build the roads their nation needed. Not for pay, not for recognition, but out of a fierce, shared belief that Burkina Faso's future could not wait any longer. What followed was one of the most extraordinary volunteer movements the region had ever witnessed. The air across the countryside vibrated with motion. Groups of women marched before sunrise, carrying shovels, baskets, and handmade tools. Some held babies on their backs while guiding wheelbarrows filled with stones. Others formed human chains, passing buckets of earth from hand to hand, laughing, singing, chanting, their voices rising like a pulse traveling through the land. They moved with the rhythm of collective purpose, their presence turning forgotten paths into living arteries of progress. The movement grew not because of orders, but because of inspiration. Word traveled from one region to the next. Women were shaping their communities with their own hands. Roads once swallowed by erosion were redefined by coordinated teamwork. Trails that had been impassable for years emerged as usable routes. The transformation was not symbolic. It was physical, measurable, immediate. In marketplaces, people spoke in awe about the scenes unfolding across the country. This was not a project owned by officials or corporations. This was the people taking charge of their destiny. This was national pride expressed through sweat, unity, and movement. Villagers watched the volunteers pass through like a river of resolve. The scale challenged imagination. Lines of women stretching across kilometers, singing traditional work songs that blended with the scraping of tools against the earth. The songs shifted from region to region, but their meaning was universal. We move forward together. We build together. We rise together. Observers compared the momentum to the early days of major civil mobilization movements. Communities reorganized their daily routines to support the volunteers. Men prepared water stations, youth groups cleared initial brush, elders offered guidance on terrain and safe routes. The entire country seemed to enter a synchronized beat, each person finding their place in the rhythm. Local development experts began documenting the unfolding events, noting the ripple effects that went far beyond the roads themselves. When a village gained a usable passageway, farmers could bring produce to markets more easily. School children could travel without long detours. Emergency transport became quicker, more reliable. Entire local economies began to breathe anew. Traffic that once took hours over broken ground was reduced dramatically as new corridors connected regions more smoothly. Areas previously isolated during the rainy season found new resilience through reinforced pathways. What had long been considered impossible without heavy machinery was being rewritten through community power. International observers took notice. Analysts from neighboring countries studied the volunteer movement with a mixture of admiration and astonishment. Reports circulated describing how 20,000 women had sparked a development shift not through technology, but through unity. In an era dominated by expensive infrastructure contracts, Burkina Faso showcased a different kind of strength, the strength of collective will. Media outlets across Africa highlighted the story, calling the women a symbol of national reinvention. Social commentators discussed how the movement challenged stereotypes about rural communities. Economic researchers examined how grassroots infrastructure efforts could complement formal projects, accelerating growth in ways often overlooked in modern planning. Around the world, development organizations issued statements praising the initiative as one of the most inspiring examples of citizen-led transformation in recent years. Some groups compared it to historic volunteer movements that reshaped societies through mass participation. Others called it a powerful reminder that national progress is not only measured through budgets and machines, but through human unity. Within Burkina Faso, the emotional impact was immense. In towns where roads had been little more than uneven trails, people found themselves walking on smoother, more navigable surfaces, all thanks to the women who refused to wait for change. The roads carried more than travelers, they carried pride. Every step on those pathways felt like a step into a new era. Stories began emerging from the volunteers themselves. Groups described waking before dawn, preparing food for the day's work, and meeting at designated gathering points. For many, the journey to the construction site took hours. Yet they marched with an energy that came not from rest, but from conviction. Some volunteers spoke of how the movement deepened bonds between villages and regions. Strangers became collaborators. Different ethnic groups worked side by side, and communities that rarely interacted found themselves united in a shared mission. The road-building effort became a symbolic thread weaving the nation closer together. Large gatherings formed along the new routes. People from nearby villages came to cheer the women, offering encouragement, water, songs, and blessings. Children followed the volunteers, mimicking their movements with small sticks and toy wheelbarrows, their laughter mixing with the clatter of stones and tools. In urban centers, the movement sparked discussions about the meaning of national responsibility. Radio hosts debated how citizen empowerment could reshape development frameworks. University groups organized forums to analyze the social impact of the volunteer wave. The movement touched not only the soil of the land, but the spirit of the country's identity. The roads themselves became symbols of hope, lines drawn across the map by the people for the people. These were not projects framed by contracts or deadlines. They were expressions of solidarity, created through direct contribution and shared pride. The work was not easy. The climate in Burkina Faso can be unforgiving, with blistering heat during the day and cool winds at night. Dust clings to the skin, the sun burns the horizon, and the land can resist even the strongest tools. Yet the women pressed on, determined to leave something permanent for the next generation. Every shovel of earth carried meaning. Every stone placed on the road was a declaration of possibility. Every step forward echoed the dream of a nation refusing to wait for others to shape its future. This volunteer movement became more than infrastructure. It became a message to neighboring countries, showing what citizens could accomplish when united. A message to global observers, challenging assumptions about who holds the power to drive change. A message to Burkina Faso itself, proving that the strength of a country lies not only in its institutions, but in its people. Communities that once felt disconnected from national projects now found themselves at the heart of one. Villages that once waited years for development assistance now saw change forged by their own hands. Teenagers witnessed their mothers and grandmothers redefine what community leadership looked like. The visual impact alone, thousands of women moving with synchronized purpose, left countless onlookers speechless. As the movement reached its peak, drone footage captured sweeping panoramas of the volunteers forming long, winding lines across the terrain. The images spread across the internet, igniting global admiration. People from distant continents shared the videos, calling the women role models for community-led progress. The reaction online was electric. Viewers around the world described feeling moved, inspired, even humbled by the scale of the unity on display. Comments poured in praising the volunteers as symbols of resilience, dignity, and determination. Analysts wrote opinion pieces about how the movement challenged global narratives about African development, highlighting instead a story rooted in agency and collective strength. Inside Burkina Faso, celebration blended with reflection. The movement revealed something profound about the nation's social fabric. When communities believe in a shared purpose, extraordinary things become possible. The road stood as living proof. Even after the initial wave of construction slowed, the spirit of the movement continued. Many communities formed permanent volunteer groups to maintain the roads. Others began planning new local infrastructure projects. People felt a renewed sense of ownership over their environment and their future. This movement did not claim to solve every challenge, but it did something rare. It unified people across regions, ages, and backgrounds in a single, undeniable moment of collective achievement. And in doing so, it created a legacy far more powerful than any document or speech could offer. It created belief. Belief that community strength can reshape geography. Belief that development can rise from the ground up. Belief that a nation's greatest resource is its people. The story of Burkina Faso's 20,000 women volunteers stands as one of the most inspiring examples of grassroots transformation in recent memory. It reminds the world that progress is not merely built. It is carried forward by human hands, fueled by human hearts, and sustained by the courage to rise together.